Okay, I said at the end of the last video that in this video I was going to talk about sound and reliable, and I am going to do that, but let me just point out one thing before we get to that. So at the top of page 6, it says, if an argument does not satisfy the definition of deductively valid, then it is deductively invalid. Okay, we covered that. I mentioned that in the last video. Some of those arguments were invalid. Okay, here there is no in between. Every argument is either deductively valid or deductively invalid. And when an argument is deductively invalid, even if the premises are true, the conclusion is not guaranteed to be true. With respect to being inductively strong, the situation is somewhat different. An argument that is invalid can have any amount or degree of inductive strength from strong to weak, and then even down to worthless. The issue here is how probable is it that the conclusion will be true if the premises are true. The more probable the conclusion, the higher the argument's degree of inductive strength. Okay, and table 1.1 outlines different degrees of inductive strength. All right, you can look at that. Let me just show you this. So every argument is valid or invalid, every single one. Now, if an argument is invalid, it's also going to be one of these: inductively strong, medium, weak, or if it's even worse than weak, we might say it's worthless. And we can also have other designations in between these. So medium strong or medium weak or whatever. And what we're doing just in this week and next week, we're not going to worry about making these kind of fine distinctions. The important thing for you to keep in mind is that if an argument is invalid, then it has to be inductively strong, medium, or weak, or maybe worse, worthless. So an argument can be good in the sense that it's valid. Being valid is one way for an argument to be good, but an argument can also be good if it's inductively strong, in which case it's invalid, it's not valid, but for what it's trying to do, provide a conclusion that's very probably true, we would still say it's a good argument. It's inductively strong. Okay, so now we will move on to section 1.3. So you should read this. But these are the two definitions. So first we'll start with sound. So an argument is sound when it is deductively valid and has all true premises. Okay, so let's go back to some examples. Okay, so these two down here, we said this one about Mary and this one about Barack Obama. We said that both of these were valid. This one about Barack Obama is also sound. So it's valid if these premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true, and both premises are in fact true. Barack Obama is a man, all men are warm-blooded animals, or all men are warm-blooded. Both of those are true, and so the argument is sound. Okay, so again, it has to be valid, and it has to have true premises. If it meets both of those conditions, then it's sound. All right, now over here, this one about Mary, we said is valid, but we also said that premise 2 is false. All cold-blooded animals are lizards is not true. There are also snakes and turtles and whatever. All reptiles are cold-blooded, and so we have a valid argument, but one that is not sound. Okay, then back to page 10. The definition of reliable is an argument that is inductively strong and has all true premises. Okay, so this is very similar to sound, but instead of the argument being deductively valid, the argument is inductively strong. In both cases, we have to establish that the argument is valid or strong first. Then we check if the premises are in fact true. Okay, so let's see. We'll look at these two, this one and this one. If you want to think about them for a second first, you can. So both are inductively strong. This one about the US presidential election. So we just have the one premise. That premise is true. You might not know that, but it is in fact true. So this argument is reliable. Okay, we already established that it's inductively strong and its one premise is true. Okay, this one here about Peter being able to breathe underwater. Again, we established that this one is inductively strong. However, these premises are false. There's no human being who can breathe underwater without artificial aids. So this argument is not reliable. It's inductively strong, but all of the premises are not true. Okay, in between here, we'll look at these two if you want to try them. Okay, so first here on the left, George H.W. Bush's oldest son is George W. Bush. George W. Bush was the president. Therefore, George H.W. Bush's oldest son was the president. Okay, so this one is valid. If these premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true. And actually, before we go any farther with that one, we can also look at this one right next to it. Wilt Chamberlain's oldest son is George W. Bush. George W. Bush was the president. Therefore, Wilt Chamberlain's oldest son was the president. Okay, so this is also valid. If these premises are true, then this conclusion has to be true. So we have two valid arguments here, but they're still different. The one on the left has all true premises. George H.W. Bush, that's who we often think of as the elder Bush. His oldest son was George W. or is George W. Bush, or was. The elder Bush is dead now. But in any case, that premise is true. George W. Bush was the president, so that premise is true. And as we already said, the argument is valid. So this is a sound argument. Meanwhile, over here, Wilt Chamberlain's oldest son is George W. Bush. This is false. And so this argument is not sound. Okay, so we have two valid arguments. So they're both good arguments in that sense, but one is sound and one is not sound. Okay, let's see. Are there any other ones I want to go over? Well, this one right here, if you want to think about it, I'll just tell you is this is inductively strong, and again, you might not know, but it is in fact the case that all of these premises are true, so this argument is also reliable. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I will do one more video on these arguments where I'll go over these. So if you want to look at these now and just think about, let's see, actually for these, I'm just going to do valid and invalid. So if you want to try them first, I'll go over them in the next video.